Welcome to ASRM Today, a podcast that takes a deeper dive into the current topics in reproductive medicine.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Hayes, your host for this episode of ASRM Today. On the show today, we're discussing ASRM's 2020 Advocacy Day. Joining me today is Becca O'Connor, Government Affairs Manager for ASRM's Office of Public Affairs in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the show, Becca.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. It's a pleasure.
Can you start by sharing some general information about Advocacy Day? What's the goal and who participates?
Absolutely. The ASRM Resolve Advocacy Day is an inspiring annual event where the infertility community, which of course includes providers, patients, family members, and others, comes together to educate members of Congress about issues and legislation important to our community.
What type of asks do you make of the members of Congress?
We make several. In fact, this year, as in past years, we advocated on a robust agenda that asks lawmakers to support legislation and policies on issues that range from increasing access to and coverage for fertility services, as well as including our veterans in those programs, to ensuring that the National Institutes of Health, and particularly the National Institute on Child Health and Human Development, where the majority of groundbreaking and critical research into infertility and women's health lives, receive adequate funding to fulfill their critical missions and advance reproductive medicine.
This was the first year we've done this virtually, right? So what impact did that have on the attendance in meetings?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, this was our very first virtual advocacy day, and by all accounts, it was both record-breaking and a resounding success. We actually had 385 advocates representing for the first time ever all 50 states. And our meetings, which were a hybrid of Zoom calls and phone calls, we had about 300 of them, were done with 30 members of Congress, which included key committee representatives and folks like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, as well as many staff members. And the good news is that many have already followed up to say that they intend to support our initiatives.
Were ASRM's leaders involved in the event?
Absolutely. ASRM's leadership, including CEO Dr. Ricardo Aziz, President Catherine Rakowski, and members of our board were directly involved. They all shared inspirational video messages for our advocates, joined congressional meetings, and even joined our fun post-event virtual happy hour where we all debriefed. And I really couldn't be more grateful to nor impressed by our leadership for their support throughout this process and for their engagement on Advocacy Day. But I also do want to give a shout out to all of our members who joined and participated in the day, and really issue a call to action, because if you couldn't make it this year or you've been on the fence about participating in the past, I want to assure you we try to make it as easy as possible, and it is a really inspiring event where your voices are not only critical but welcome.
What feedback have you received from this year's participants so far?
The feedback's been very positive, both from the Hill and from participants. Here's one example. We got an email from a patient advocate who said, Advocacy Day was absolutely an incredible experience, and I'm so grateful that I was able to participate with you all. I feel beyond empowered knowing that I used my voice to tell my story and that my story matters. And that was echoed by ASRM's leaders, who referred to it as extremely well organized and a pleasure to participate in, and that the day, frankly, in some ways might have benefited from being virtual.
Will this be a virtual event moving forward?
To be determined, but we've certainly heard a great deal of positive feedback on the format, which enabled folks from far and wide to participate in ways that perhaps they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. But what we're doing now is surveying participants and assessing what worked and what can be improved upon. And again, I would encourage everyone to stay tuned, because again, we're going to be sending out follow-up information and asking you to prioritize this in the year ahead. We need everyone and anyone that is able and willing to join to do so, and to, I will say, bring 5 friends or patients or anyone else that you can to recruit a broad and strong force for next year's Advocacy Day.
I've been speaking with Becca O'Connor, Government Affairs Manager for ASRM's Office of Public Affairs in Washington, D.C., about our first virtual Advocacy Day. Thank you so much for talking with us today, Becca.
Thank you.
This concludes this episode of ASRM Today. For show notes, other information, and discussions, go to asrmtoday.org.